you said, Rob, you said 2020 going on 2030, right? That's sort of the
Yeah.
defense industry, so to speak. I was curious to see, I mean, what is the state of cloud collaboration in your industry, and sort of what are the major issues that you see trying to grow and get to 2030 from your current state, right? That's, what do you think?
So first and foremost, the U.S. government is trying to define and do better, more data centric for the data. So they're pushing the controlled unclassified information type label. There has always been the export, EAR, ITAR type data set. But they're saying, hey, wait a minute, this isn't classified, which they have a very well-defined process, but this still needs to be sensitive and there's still some controls. So there's a growing pains for that for more the data centric side. There's also the side for the DoD itself is saying, hey, we're falling behind on some of our development. We can't leverage DevOps or Sec DevOps or all these elements that they want to go into and the speed they wish to go into. But we also live in a very tactile world, and the cloud that in the private and public sector is an always on environment, right? Where if you're in a cloud, there's an expectation that there's always some type of communication. And a lot of the environment that we have is that we're having to develop either things that are purposely air gapped, meaning that there is not communication, there's not air gapped, or in environments that are heavily restricted on the amount of communication, such as low bandwidth, or purposely disconnected, such as warfighter machines or things like that you're trying to control the environment. Right? The Internet of Things is really good because it could beacon back, but we all live in the world that we're trying to develop and build at the Internet of Things speed, but yet live in a manufacturing, it's going to be disconnected. So there is a balance of trying to say, how do we do this, kind of leverage the tools out there, and at the same time being expanding of what we say, hey, this is this data. If you work on it, develop with us. Well, the US government has about 500,000 contractors, right, in some levels. Does that mean me as L3 Harris has 50,000 people? Or does that mean that the guy with the 25 people that also has an element of this data, because they have to make this very individual specific widget, that we don't want that information getting out? And I think it's a good effort, but it is it's ridiculous, the level of scope. Now, there is an effort with CMMC to try to, going back to the comments that were made earlier, right? How do we get to that level of trust? How do we get to a standard that we can all come and say, hey, they are building, growing, and level setting across the playing field, which hopefully that can get us to. We're also working with a lot more cloud vendors, or getting more cognizant of, hey, there are some additional requirements, again, for data sovereignty, for privacy concerns, for these restrictions that, just because I work with a Canadian company, they're not going to be very comfortable with me storing their data in a government restricted, US government restricted environment. Like, how do I have those exchanges? So overall, it is coming and being flexible, if you will, working very, so for me as a cybersecurity architect, anytime I bring in a vendor, I lay out, here are the challenges up front. And then what can we do? How can we work? And then either helping them get to either accreditation or putting security controls that would make us comfortable, or our customers comfortable, that we can show we're doing due diligence, due care, or saying, hey, we can't use you over here, but maybe this element that's more commercial in nature, or working with another government that is more in line with that, then we do it more of a surgical response. But when we are looking at trying to balance kind of the enterprise, large scale efficiencies, but at the same time having these very specific requirements that are growing, not only for the number of them, but our understanding of them, we're having to approach it at a very surgical level on use case by use case by use case, versus trying to do something blanket. It is, again, it's like developing a SOAR platform, right? You don't start off by saying, I'm automating everything. You start off with like 5 things you're going to try to say X, Y, and Z. We're going to automate by the end of the year, and maybe get 2 of them. And then the year after that, you're going to 50, and the year after that, you go to 100. But that's kind of where we are now, is finding the balance, finding where we can, when he says, is do the sharing and the trust, right? Trusting the environment, but it's building that trust is where we're kind of struggling, if you will. And as well as building the trust between tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of companies that have different level of understanding of what's expected of us. And in a changing federal government regulatory environment that is also not clearly well defined, kind of like a SOX or something along those lines that are saying, this is what you're gonna do every time. It's, we think this is what we're gonna do, but hit us up in about 3 to 6 months, and we might have more information from you.
Right.